All right, welcome to the Bitcoin Beat with me, Shaun, and Jeff. Just wanted to introduce ourselves real quick. If you haven't talked with me or met either of us, I'm here in Arizona. I help organize a local Bitcoin meetup that Jeff and I attend. Back in 2011 is when I first heard about Bitcoin. I was going to a conference in Vegas for DEF CON, and 2011, 2012, there were some talks presented about it. But I didn't actually start dabble and buying until about 2017 and 2018. But even then, when I started buying, it was literally just to transfer that money right away into like a sports betting site. I didn't actually get serious and started buying the asset until about 2020. I went all in. I started taking a loan out against my 401k to buy some Bitcoin. I even rolled my entire IRA 100% over into Bitcoin. Then, after about 20 years at my job, I quit that job, partially to be able to cash out of my entire 401k. And yep, I moved 100% of that over to Bitcoin too. And I've been pretty much retired ever since. And joining the conference here today, the little chat, is my friend Jeff. Jeff, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Shaun, it's great to be here on the Bitcoin Beat. And that's what this is about. We're here to help educate and talk about what's happening in this space. It's moving so fast, and it's an honor to be here. My background started professionally at Microsoft as a contractor. While I was there, I started combining technology with financial markets, and my partners and I developed some software for trading stocks and options, and had a lot of success starting in 2014. And, I kind of ignored Bitcoin initially until I saw the price go from 1,000 to 20,000 in 2017. And I waited, and I got in around the same time as you in 2018 when it was under 10K. I just started DCAing. And the more I bought, the more I learned about it. The more I learned about it, the more I bought. And it kind of just started the snowball effect. And I ended up doing something similar in 2020, and I converted my entire 401k into Bitcoin. So you and I have both drank the Kool-Aid, but there's a good reason for that. Today, I manage a fund called the Bitcoin Denominator Group. We are regulated with the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA. So we're registered with both of those entities, and we are off to the races helping people strategically get exposure to this amazing asset class.
Oh, excellent. Hey, a quick question for you. When you got in 2020 big time, did you feel you were late as well?
I didn't feel
Nice.
like I was that late. You kind of do feel like you missed a big portion of the move because it just moved up so quick, so fast. But because in 2017, it had already hit 20,000, and I waited for the price to come back to like sub 10,000, really 5,000, and buy it. I didn't feel like I was that late. But I know that a lot of people still feel that way today. So I encourage them that we're still in the early innings.
Yeah, I have friends and acquaintances tell me that I got in early, and I remember back when I got in, it still felt like I was late. And pretty much everybody that I talk to now, whether they get in big or they just kind of make a first move, a lot of them feel that they're late, and it just never is the case in the end.
No, it's not. I agree with that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to start by sharing here is I wanted to mention MicroStrategy.
Hmm.
They usually every week buy some Bitcoin, and they generally buy a lot. But this last week they didn't buy any. Now I think they're right around like 762,000 Bitcoin. But what I like is this post by Adam. He generally covers a lot of the weekly buys and other things Bitcoin related, and he broke down this tweet here that I'm sharing with
Hmm.
weekly purchases over the last few years. And we could see, back in when they first started their strategy, they were buying about 1,300 a week. In 2021, it was about 1,000 a week. And then 2022, when things were really starting to get to the bottom, when they probably should have been buying more, they averaged about 156 a week. But then it ramped back up. They got right back on track and started having an average of 1,000 a week. And then starting in 2024, they started to manufacture and have some financial instruments to be able to buy more Bitcoin and to leverage more. So they got almost up to 5,000 a week. It was 4,900 a week. And then just last year, they kept going strong at 4,300 a week. But the real point here is this year they've been doubling that, even more so. So they've been averaging, when Adam made this post last week, 7,649 Bitcoin a week. Now, they didn't have any of this last week though, right? So the average for this last week was actually right around 6,000 or so when you consider the first 3 months of the year. So I think it's 6,158. So I got a question for you. Just in your head, no cheating. At this pace, if they have about 762,000 Bitcoin and they're buying 6,100 a week, when do you think that they will hit 1 million Bitcoin?
Oh man, I think it's possible that they hit 1 million Bitcoin by the end of this year.
Yeah, actually the math, considering this last week averaged in, it's now December 14th is when they'll buy their 1 millionth Bitcoin. And that's incredible to think about how fast that's moving, because at the beginning of the year, they seem to still be a little bit of ways away, but they've just really ramped up on how much they're buying. And that'll fluctuate from time to time, but that's kind of the marker I'm watching for. Are they going to hit that million this year, or is it going to be next year? And if it's this year, how early?
I got a question for you. So I think they own roughly 730,000, maybe a little bit more Bitcoin. And with the total mined Bitcoin, I think we just crossed that 20 million mark. That means they own about, 4% of the supply. What do you think about them owning so much Bitcoin? Is that a good thing, a bad thing, or kind of a neutral thing?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. One of the things that's very common on social media is they're worried about that concentration with just one entity. That's something that I don't think there's a lot of worry about. I think they are striking while the price is still low. And what I mean by that is anybody who's trying to get into this space, like the meta planets or some of the much smaller ones, are not going to be able to get anywhere close to the amount that strategy has, especially if the price goes up. And they're at a point where they have so much, and they have the instruments and the name brand right now, that no matter how much more buying there is, they're still going to be able to buy more than anybody else. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think that's good for the industry, but it also gives kind of a blueprint for all these other companies, I think, to do that. You being in this space and having your own kind of fund that deals with stuff like this, what's your opinion of that?
Yeah, I think there are trade-offs here. I think one of the good things about it is the coins are rotating from the holders who have perhaps owned a majority of the coins early on. Those who were really early to Bitcoin in 2012 and 13 that have held this long are now distributing them to more people through companies like MicroStrategy. So if you own, a share of MicroStrategy, you do have indirect exposure to Bitcoin, which is great. I think it helps diversify ownership of Bitcoin. I also think it brings on institutional adoption, which is something that I believe is a good thing, a net positive for this space. A few of the concerns that I have would be, one, I know last year they announced that they would not be showing proof of reserves, which basically is a cryptographic way to verify that you own the Bitcoin that you say you own. And that's a big ethos in the Bitcoin space, and I prescribe to that. They do use an auditing firm, a third-party auditing firm that verifies they own the Bitcoin they say they have. So I'm not overly concerned with that, although I would like them to take a step into the cypherpunk mindset and show proof of reserve so that it can alleviate any concerns that people have. I think one of the other concerns I have is a recent video that I saw Michael Saylor. He was on stage at the Digital Asset Summit in New York recently talking about, quote unquote, we bought 5.3 BTC for every BTC created by a miner. And that's kind of shocking. It just goes to show how aggressive that they're being in accumulating Bitcoin, which does probably mean they'll own close to 1 million by the end of this year. I just want to be in a system that is anti-fragile. And so I'm kind of worried about any tertiary or second order consequences from this type of aggressive buying. And so I'll land it there, but I think on a net, it's a positive for the space.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the proof of reserves too, because last year, especially at the Bitcoin conference in 2025, he defended that move where the company wasn't going to post publicly their addresses. And I wasn't really bought into that explanation. It makes sense on the surface. Why have another attack vector? Why have another route of any kind of exposure? But you're right. I mean, the whole ethos, the whole history of Bitcoin, you call it that cypherpunk mentality of it, is it's transparent. So I know there's trackers out there that track a lot of the wallets, so you can kind of see some of the movements already, but that takes a little bit of effort. Why not just come out? There are exchanges out there and other companies, digital asset treasury companies, that just put it all out there so people like you and I at any moment could check that balance. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and one of the other things too that I think we should be conscientious of is that, we live in a debt-based, credit-based economy where Bitcoin is hard, sound money. And what Saylor and BlackRock and these other institutions that are coming into the space are trying to do is merge this new asset with absolute finite scarcity that cannot be printed by anybody else into an existing fiat debt-based society. And I wish them the best. I hope they succeed at this. I think there are going to be challenges when you try to fit a square peg through a round hole, but it is going to be interesting how they're able to digitize credit, essentially, and that's what they're doing. And I'm rooting for them.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned fitting that square peg. You had something you wanted to bring up here about Square and something they're doing recently.
Oh yeah, what a good transition. So let me just pull it up on my end because I've been following this story a little bit. Basically, the founder of Square, Jack Dorsey, who's been a longtime Bitcoiner, who owns Square, which is a payment system for merchants who, where you scan your credit card and you pay for food or clothes or whatever it is you're doing. Square has enabled Bitcoin payments. They've also recently announced that they've enabled Bitcoin payments through the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 built on top of Bitcoin. And I think this just goes to show that some of the pushback against Bitcoin has been, well, I can't use it as money, or I can't use it as a form of payment or a medium of exchange. And that is breaking in real time, because now you can. You're actually, if you're a merchant and you have one of those Square devices, you can accept Bitcoin, which is a beautiful thing. And you don't have to. It can convert on the back end to US dollars without you even knowing that the person who just paid you used Bitcoin to pay you. So I think we're going to see more of that in the coming months and years ahead, where Bitcoin just becomes so ubiquitous with the financial system that people are able to use it as a medium of exchange and they don't even know they're using it.
Yeah, that's kind of important. They don't actually have to be knowledgeable, and they don't have to make a decision to figure out how that works and how they can integrate it into their businesses. It's just, if they use Square, it's already there, is what you're saying based on this.
Yeah, there's no more excuses, right? If you want to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, it's increasingly easier to do that.
Yeah, that's a big announcement. Jack Dorsey's always been a pretty good advocate for the reasons why Bitcoin can save humanity. He's always been kind of a good player in the space, and this just kind of moves that needle forward.
Definitely.
You had shared something recently too that I found interesting. You had put it on your Twitter here. Let me pull that one up. This is your gold to Bitcoin ratio chart.
Yeah, this one caught my eye. I am cherry picking the data a little bit here, but if you track from February 28th, which was the start of the military engagement with the war in Iran, So I'm using February 28th because that was when it, in my mind, officially started, and I think you can qualify that as accurate. You'll notice that gold is actually down 15% in this time, and Bitcoin is flat. And it's just interesting because if you want to consider like gold the traditional risk off asset that people flee to in times of uncertainty, in this case, it's not happening the way it used to happen. Gold is down, Bitcoin is flat, and you'd think if Bitcoin was such a speculative asset, it'd be the opposite. Bitcoin would be down an additional 15% and maybe closer to 50,000 than where it's at today at 66 or whatever it's trading at right now. I think you have the ticker above.
Oh yeah, yeah. It looks like we're at 66,568 right now. You're right though. That's it's like that correlation seemed to break right around that time frame that the war effort started.
Yeah, it just kind of begs the question. It's something you and I both know well, that Bitcoin is a neutral asset. It's an asset that is not controlled by any central bank or nation state. It's permissionless. It's open. It can't be confiscated. It's cheap to secure. It's easy to transfer. So it's like, are people who are looking for less risky asset in a time of war or uncertainty waking up to these digital asset realities and the properties that Bitcoin has as a digitally native asset, which again, if you go back to like MicroStrategy stock or even the IBIT Bitcoin ETF, those are just wrappers that ignore the digital asset realities built in the Bitcoin blockchain. And so I don't know. I picked out that I'm cherry picking, but I feel like it's worth bringing up because people should start to consider these things.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. And like you said, even with a little bit of chop, Bitcoin's been pretty flat, and gold hasn't done what you expect it to do in times of uncertainty like that. Wonder how much that'll be talked about at the upcoming Bitcoin conference. I know last year Peter Schiff actually showed up to it. This year we'll see if he comes. I mean, this would be the year to do it before this chart diverges anymore. Speaking about that, actually, I don't know if you saw the agenda dropped for the Bitcoin conference. We're heading to the conference in April, so that's just about a month away, and they just announced the agenda, which is going over what speakers and what stages are going to be presenting. I think one of the cool things about the agenda is I'm excited to see what people are presenting. One caveat I'll put to this is this changes so rapidly, so frequently. In fact, to the point where I wouldn't even recommend we plan for what we want to listen to and when and make our schedule up, because I'd say even a day or two before, there's massive changes where there might be a speaker I want to see, but now they're on a different stage. Maybe they're on a different stage on a different day. That changes rapidly. But one of the key things is like some of the keynote speakers, like the Arthur Hayes, the Jack Mallers, what they're presenting on is generally announced and will stay the same. The day and time might change, but the keynote speakers that are going to be on the main stage, that Nakamoto stage, are pretty much set. And they have some already listed, and so I've been scrolling through it, kind of earmarking ones I want to go see. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think, one of the things that I've enjoyed is sort of the networking events, the side events, just being in the environment with all that energy, talking to other Bitcoiners, getting different perspectives, seeing new products that are being developed. Some of these vendors you and I work directly with, so it's cool to go up to their booths and just like meet them face to face and be like, yeah, I've used your product, or I have one of those devices. It's always a surprise. You never know what you're going to get at the Bitcoin conference. And last year it was pretty high profile with politicians being there. Actually, politicians have been there over the last few years, but it's just a testimony to how far we've come from being this like ignored niche kind of fringe asset class to now, politics, nation states, big corporations are starting to adopt it. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And last year in Vegas, we were both at that one in 2025. They had JD Vance come out for his keynote, which was on day two, the first, day one of the general pass, and they locked everything down. And I remember back in 2024 when I went to Nashville, Trump was actually there, and there was some debate whether or not he was actually going to show up because I think it was a couple weeks after the event. I don't know if we can mention that on YouTube and not get dinged for that, but there was that incident. So it was just like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and everybody's like, is Trump still going to show up? And he did, and everything was on lockdown. There was Secret Service to get into the building, Secret Service to get into the Nakamoto stage. It was just nuts. And then last year, there was a lot less hyped up, but Vegas probably could handle that kind of crowd more. This year, Eric Trump is probably the biggest political name that's been announced so far, but there's always tweets from David Bailey and others talking about possible others coming. So we'll see if there's anything else that gets dropped in the next couple weeks that they're working on.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to just remember that Bitcoin is apolitical, and some of the pushback that I've gotten from people that are more Democrat leaning has been, oh, I don't like Bitcoin because it's associated with Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Shaun and I, we were in Bitcoin when Trump was calling it beanie babies. And, you and I both were in Bitcoin before Michael Saylor, before Trump, before all these big name headliners. Even, Grant Cardone is one who's come up recently. You and me understood this asset class before them. And one of the things that we understood was that it's money for everybody. It's apolitical. It doesn't need to have a politician backing it because Bitcoin is going to do what Bitcoin does regardless. So I think that's important for everybody to remember, especially if you're just getting into this space and you're wondering, is this like a Republican versus Democrat thing? No, it's not. It's money for everybody.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It absolutely is apolitical, but if you're just getting into the space now and just learning about Bitcoin and studying about it, it might seem like that because that's the side of the aisle that's talking about it more just currently. But in the end, it's for everybody, including your enemies. You mentioned Grant Cardone. I got a chance to meet him at last year's conference back in one of those networking areas. And he had made this post here that I'm going to pull up that he's buying 100 Bitcoin this week. And this is a good example of something you were kind of talking about. See, these people are somewhat newer to the space, to digital assets in general. And they're just finding out about Bitcoin. Now, Grant Cardone is this real estate mogul guy. He's the old boomer mindset of buying real estate, using that debt to buy more real estate and have more cash flows coming in. And he is like a real live example of how people move on the chart, where you're either a denier, then you're skeptic, then you dabble, then you're a believer, and then you're all in. And you can follow the chart with Grant, and he's like, you're right here, and he's moving all the way down here, and you see these step-by-step processes. He's transitioning into holding Bitcoin. Now he's using some of his cash flows from real estate to buy more Bitcoin, and he's already on the step now where he's like publicly talking about it and letting everybody that's in his sphere know that Bitcoin's an asset that's important to him and that he's stacking. And like you said, I mean, we've been in it before some of these big names have ever got into it. Love the attention, but it's nice to see these journeys that everybody goes on. And yeah, Grant's going to be joining some of the big dogs soon with the type of stacking he's doing lately.
Yeah, you got that right. But one thing that's cool is you don't have to be a big dog like Grant Cardone. In fact, I'm an advisor for a company called Fund Launch, and they help emerging fund managers in all kinds of different asset classes, one of those being real estate. And something that I've noticed over the last year is that a lot of real estate investors and real estate fund managers are considering doing the same exact thing as Grant Cardone, or have been considering it even prior to Grant Cardone. In fact, one of the people that I'm looking forward to hearing speak at the Bitcoin conference this year is somebody by the name of CJ Constantinos. And he has a company called the People's Reserve. I believe I got that right. And they help people with Bitcoin-backed mortgages. And I think this space is just going to continue to see adoption in the sense that other asset classes are going to want to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet as pristine collateral because it will continue to outperform everything as it's done, over the past 15 years. So that's one of the speakers I'm also looking forward to seeing at this upcoming conference.
Yeah, we'll have to watch and see when his part gets dropped on the agenda, if he has any kind of speaking parts. That'll be interesting. Look forward to meeting him too. There's going to be quite a few people we'll be able to meet, especially in the hallways and the networking area, which I'm really excited about. Well, I think now is a good time we can kind of wrap up the Bitcoin beat that we're talking about. Jeff, wanted to start by thanking you for recommending this collaboration. This is really fun, and I think a lot of people will get some benefit from it. And honestly, for any of the viewers watching, whether you know us or you're just finding us online, if you found any of this interesting, help us out and give us both a follow on our channels. We'll have links down in the description. And like every podcaster, influencer, content creator, whatever you want to call them, they always say, like, subscribe, comment, because it helps. And the reason why everybody says that is it actually does. When I make videos, I notice ones that get likes and comments early after I post it get a lot more traction, a lot more people get eyes on it through the algorithms on YouTube especially. So definitely do that. But I'll be honest with you. The one thing I really want, and maybe I'm speaking for you, Jeff, I don't know, I like the comments because I want to see what you think. And I mean that in any way possible. So if you want to tell both of us that we're idiots and we should have been buying gold this whole time instead of Bitcoin, I want to hear that. If you want to high five me because I call XRP a scam, the biggest scam in the top 10 list of tokens, shout out to the XRP army. Yeah, I want to hear that. But ideally, if you got questions, like either stuff we talk about, things that you want us to cover on a future podcast, any kind of follow-up like that, those are the things I really want to see, because then we can see if we can fit that in and get some opinion on that. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely love questions. I think questions are what help dialogue, right? Sometimes you get up in front of a group of people, you're going to give a presentation, and there's no interaction, and it becomes really awkward. So even if you have any criticisms, right, or feedback that you would think would help us improve this, please drop a comment in the channel. Let us know. We are going to keep doing this. I think Shaun and I are planning on trying to make this a weekly thing. But really, at the end of the day, we want to help people understand and get into this asset class. Get off zero, right? Learn about the nuances. And this space is moving so fast, we're not going to run out of content. Every week, we're going to have something new to talk about. So please join the conversation.
Yeah, I agree, man. Well, everybody, have a good rest of the week. We'll see you.